and they're all reading fluently. And my son, I was like, what is wrong here? Why? And I had him tested, and he was not even registering for reading. So at second grade, and I was at like one of the best public schools in the neighborhood, and went to the principal and said, well, I need a really good teacher for third grade. And that teacher told me, and I went to her and said, I've requested you for being a teacher, so his teacher for next year. And she told me, well, he's not reading by third grade, he never will. Well, as an attorney, I just dug my heels in on that one. That really made me upset. I was like, he is 9 years old. We cannot give up on our children when they're 9 years old. So fast forward, I did not quit my law practice yet because I was paying for tutors to do intervention for him. And certain things work like just, there's unbelievable. It's best stuff since sliced bread. And after a few years, I kind of went, if he's having trouble, I bet there's a bunch of other kids out there also having trouble. And my mother had started and opened educational development services. Bramlett's my maiden name. If you knew Erin Bramlett, she was phenomenal at what she did. A really good businesswoman. And her health started failing, and then her tutor's health started failing. So one thing led to another, and I'm working for her. I quit my local law practice and started working for her, and really grew this dyslexia component. Along the way, we did SAT, ACT, got some victims in the class right now. So that was fun. I still do a little bit of that. Well, last summer, I'm like looking at the end, and what am I going to do as a retirement gig? Am I going to close EDS? And every year I was like, yeah, I'm going to close this. It's just such a pain to run this business. And I couldn't. I just couldn't close the doors. And that's why I told my mom, and she wanted to close the doors. I said, the neighborhood needs you. The city needs you. Don't close the doors. But last summer, when I wasn't even planning to do this, a friend of mine called me from Hope. She's a neuropsychologist. And she said, I want you to come over here and really grow this dyslexia business, community-wide. And I said, I'm on it. I quit practicing law as a criminal prosecutor, actually, before I went to a Warren Management District, thinking I'm going to solve all the crime in the city. Well, that didn't work out so well. And then when I was, and my mother's reason for opening EDS was that one kid in her class that she couldn't reach. She wanted to do one-on-one. Well, then I do one-on-one for 20 years. I'm like, I still am not making a dent in the community. I'm getting all these great kids, helping these great kids, but there's still such a need for it. So within a month, I'm out of EDS and I'm over it. Okay. So it was like here one day and there the next. So my goal there now is I'm director of tutoring, or director. They actually were very sweet and kept my old business in educational development services. So I'm the director of that. It's basically the tutoring department. But I've got a few tutors over there. But since I saw one of y'all a week ago, oh, you're going to come speak to our Rotary. I went, yeah, because we're excited to hear about Hope Haven. But that wasn't really my intent. But I'm happy to tell you about Hope Haven, and I know about this much, so go to their website. But it was originally, next slide. Oh, I can use this slide, but you never gave me this one.
On the desk.
On the desk, there it is. Okay. I'll go there. So, Hope Haven used to have medical components. They did a lot of polio at that time, and we needed it. They were actually bought out by Nemours. So Nemours now does what Hope Haven used to do. But now, really under our umbrella, we've got a clinical area that has a lot of mental health counselors and neuropsychologists who diagnose autism, mental health issues, dyslexia, just anything like that. And we also have a sweet recovery school where we have kids that are low functioning, like they say 0 to 3 or 4, but it's probably age 1 to 4. We're trying to get them streamlined for kindergarten. We have Hope Academy, which is right next to my department. But those are students 14 to 22 years old who are low IQ or autistic, and we're teaching them life skills. So I go in there after being at EDS with the neighborhood kids, and I'm going, oh my goodness, this is a totally different world in a good way. But also, was doing a lot of IEP advocacy and whatnot. Now there's someone there to do it, so that's great. And we work together. And then I have the catering department. I have four of us total right now, but looking to grow that area as well. So if you see a sign like this at your bakery, and there's, you see things online, the churches and the bad things that come out in the bulletins and those kinds of things, don't make fun of the person who wrote it, because you're probably looking at someone who has dyslexia. So it may be funny and laugh, but don't laugh at them. So dyslexia affects 20% of our population. When we spoke at I'm a member of Downtown Rotary, and that's because of my dad. I swear 20% of the people came up to me afterwards saying, no, I've got a grandchild. I know I was dyslexic. I know my neighbor is dyslexic. I mean, I bet if we raised hands in here, 20% of you would raise your hand if you've been exposed to anybody with dyslexia, yourself, a relative, a cousin, a neighbor, those kinds of things. So what's sad is that without intervention, 80% of those people end up in jail. Our jails, 80% of our jail, and I've had Judge Flowers do some research for me, 80% of our jail is full of illiterate. So consequently, they are not contributing to our community. Oops. Okay, so by ignoring a sign of dyslexia, they do not learn. They do not learn to read. They end up repeating a grade because they fail. Mental health issues start to come up. They drop out of school. What do you think happens when they drop out of school? They turn to crime. And this can happen as early as like 4th, 5th, 6th grade. And they just give up. They've been bullied. They've been not successful in their school academics. So they drop out, turn to crime, and as adults with a criminal record, even if they get better, it's a hard road to get a job after that. In Duval County, there's approximately 25,000 students, which means 5,000 of the students, 20%, are dyslexic. That's a huge number. And then about 2,000 of those actually receive services, but they're not receiving services until 3rd grade. So if you're a grandparent, parent, or a friend of someone who's struggling, a friend whose child is struggling, and the kindergarten teacher says, let's just wait and see. When they get to 1st grade teacher, but let's just wait and see. Johnny's still developing. Okay, getting to 2nd grade, we've got stomach aches, we've got not wanting to go to school, we're throwing temper tantrums to do homework. Something's wrong. Houston, something's wrong. So, and it's not much better if they go to private school. A lot of private schools, there's about 5,000 kids in Duval County to go to private school, 1,000 with a reading disability, again, another 20%. Few schools have the knowledge or the ability to handle. We're really lucky in Ortega. You've got Riverside Presbyterian and you've got St. Mark's. Those are 2 fantastic schools. Those teachers know what they're doing. And they teach it all day long to everybody. So a dyslexic child does very well at those schools, unless they're severely dyslexic and there may be some issues there. But for the most part, we're good here. But that's not citywide. And a lot of these schools take scholarship money because people are, oh, I can't get my child isn't doing well in public school. Let me move to private, because private's got to be better. It isn't necessarily better. So ask questions. The other problem is that with teacher education, believe it or not, a lot of undergraduate bachelor level courses and teacher certifications do not include anything related to dyslexia. Isn't that shocking? I mean, it just blows my mind that our teachers are not trained in this. It affects 20% of our population. And I'm going to talk about the money that's involved also. So they're not taught to how to recognize it. They're not taught what to do about it. Maybe they get something at a master's level. And luckily, I can accept out UF and FSU. They have wonderful programs, but again, not at their bachelor level still. Once you get to a master's level, Florida State has Joe Torgensen, who's been like one of the research gurus forever. And Florida, University of Florida, has this great program that just opened last summer. They've been doing it with teachers for a while. So the good news is that this program on the University of Florida is going into our Duval County schools K-2 next year. Actually, they started this year. It's going to be in all K-2 next year. So that's really, really, really good news. But what about those kids that are there now? They're moving on to 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, and they're not getting this help. But we are putting our finger, we're stopping the bleeding by letting this program come in, which is really great for public schools. I'm going to skip through a couple of slides here because your parents, this is more about informing the community. So at Hope Haven, our job is to, with our community awareness, is to provide parent support. Let's get too far. Oh, guys. Provide awareness of dyslexia and ways to educate those with dyslexia and other learning issues. It can be alleviated. They don't have to struggle. We also want to inform the community of ways to recognize and address it. So signs of dyslexia are easy to, like I said, teachers don't even recognize it. The first sign is a directional issue. They have a left-right issue. They don't know their left and their right hand. And that's the kid who walks in with his shoes on the wrong foot, right? The Velcro's going the wrong way. Instead of going out, it's coming in. You might see that ever happen with little kids. If they struggle when they're learning their letters, learning their alphabet, and learning their sounds, struggle with spelling. Spelling's the biggest indicator of dyslexia. Oral directions are hard, comprehension doesn't happen. They have all these social emotional issues that I mentioned before, the stomach aches, the frustration during homework. COVID wasn't good to these kids. They were in kindergarten, 1st grade with a mask on, they couldn't hear or poop or cough, and if it good, it wasn't very clear. They were on Zoom, or they were, and then when they did go back to school, thank goodness for our state, they went back into the classroom, but every time someone got sick in the class, the whole class went home. You know, so the second half of 2020, they were out of school. The teacher had no idea how to get all this online. That was pretty much of a loss. 21 was there, but they were in and out of school. So it was very inconsistent education. So there's some myths and facts about dyslexia. So I want to show hands maybe. Anybody think that dyslexia is a vision issue? It does exist. I'm going to convince you that dyslexia really exists. I had a tutor one time saying, you know, they just aren't working hard enough. They're working so hard. But it's not a vision issue. Otherwise, Jim Lanier or somebody else would have given us classes to fix that, right? We wouldn't have that issue. It's not low IQ. Steve Jobs was dyslexic. I could go on with the number of people that are dyslexic. Einstein supposedly is, but they want to take him for everything. ADHD and who knows what else. But so it has nothing to do with IQ, which is interesting because you can look at someone and say, and have no idea that they're dyslexic. If you look at my child now, you know, he's not dyslexic. He doesn't look funny or anything. And it's a myth that they will never read. Not true. And Poverty. Poverty does not create dyslexia, but it is hard to remediate the dyslexia in someone who's suffering from poverty. Their parents don't recognize it. They trust the school system. They don't know why Johnny can't read, and nobody does anything about it. So poverty is involved, but it's not a cause of dyslexia. The fact that a child was not read to does play into it, but my child was read to more than the first child. We read to him all the time. Now, when the others came along, yeah, I didn't read so much. So the truth about dyslexia, it's a Greek word, dys and lexia. Two things go together. So dys means trouble with, lexia or lexis means language. So it's trouble with the language. That's why it's not just reading. It's not just spelling. It's not just comprehension. It's either all of them or one of them. It's at least one of them. It's neurobiological in origin. I'm going to talk about the brain in a minute. There's no medication. It's not like ADHD where you can take some medication to help it. There's no glasses. There's no overlays. A lot of some people recommend a blue overlay or a yellow overlay when they're reading. So the appearance can be deceiving. So I'm going to maybe skip through this in the interest of time. This is where you start. To get a neuropsychologist, I can't even say that word, neuropsychologist to do an analysis of their IQ. And the way this IQ breaks out, these are the 5 components of your IQ. And the way this breaks out is a way for a practitioner to really figure out how to help this child. Believe it or not, we were not born to read. We were born to talk. Classic example right here. But we were not born to read, so we have to learn to read. And there are lots of brain studies on it. So I know these are hard to see, but the middle one is a typical reader. You can see at the back of the brain, it's lighting up. They actually do functional MRI work on readers and look at their brain. That's a typical reader. The far right is the dyslexia reader, and you can be as far away as you want. You can see that brain does not light up when he's doing a reading activity. So that's the problem. Our brain is pretty incredible. All these pieces work together. Don't ask me all their names and where they're located. I have to look at the picture. I'm not the neuropsychologist. But in a layman's way of looking at this, which is my best thing, is that the word whale, it comes in as a sound. Then we have to pull the sounds apart. Then we have to see it as a whole word. And then we see it as a visual. So every part of our brain works together to read and spell and comprehend. It's not just one part of our brain that does that. And that leads to something called orthographic mapping, which is like imprinting. Imprinting those letters on your brain, a WH. What does the WH sound like? So imprint that those letters on your brain so you can automatically know that WH sounds like a wall. Sounds like a wall. Uh-oh. 1 minute. Am I good?
You're good so far. Keep going.
Play. So National Reading Panel, there's an International Dyslexia Association, just like all y'all's medical and professional organizations. We have one as well. And it came up with 5 pillars of literacy: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. So in history, we all kind of grew up with what was called whole language. You guys remember whole language? Everybody heard about that? Yeah, they did a whole language. Okay. That's way at the end of the spectrum. That's comprehension. That's fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Totally ignored the foundation of reading. Some kids you can put in the closet. My middle child was like that. I put him in the closet. Maybe because he heard his older brother getting tutored all the time. If you're interested in anything, a series or a podcast is called Sold a Story, and that's a reporter who has gotten into all of this research and kind of talking about the whole language. It was also called kind of a 3 cueing system. So those, hopefully, they're still out there. So some of these kids are in school getting a 3Qing or a whole language exposure, and they're missing this part. And so, and this is another representation of what it takes to read. So there's word recognition, which is actually decoding the words, sounding the words out. And once you can sound the words out, then you can start putting them together for comprehension. So that upper end of the spectrum is still very important. Don't get me wrong, it's extremely important. But how can they comprehend if they can't read the word? Here's where the money comes in. So on your left is a non-impaired reader. The top line is their IQ, and the green dash line is their reading ability. As they grow older, their reading ability should go with it. On the right is a child who's dyslexic. Notice the IQ is the same. So these kids have the same IQ, but their reading level does not keep up. On the bottom of the graph, on third grade, I've got a third grader. There's a huge gap. Like I said, they aren't getting services or tagged until third grade. By then, the gap is huge, and you've got to close that back up. I'm working with a 13-year-old right now, African American. Parents thought he had low IQ his whole life, never did anything with him. We got him tested at Nemours, got a nice average IQ. I've been working with him for a month. He is responding like that. It's going to be a long road. It takes 30 to 60 hours of retention with them. I'm trying to keep this kid from going down the wrong road. So far, he hasn't been in jail, knock on wood. Approximate cost of tutoring is $60. That's what Cookhaven charges. Outside, before I went there, I was charging way more than that. So it's extremely expensive. So $2,000 to $4,000 price ticket per child. You know, we have, I think the number 25,000 in Duval County. So that's $200,000 to remediate those kids. That's at third grade. What if we catch them in kindergarten? We won't have this problem. We won't have 5,000 kids needing services. We'll have maybe 1,000 or 1,500 needing these services. So our problem is in K through 2, we've got to close the gap and not cost, won't cost so much. People have to pay this privately. Cookhaven, that's one of the reasons I went there. We have a financial assistance program. We go out and get grants and donations and that kind of thing. So that helps these families that come in our door. Also heard a conversation, and it may be true or not true, I'm not sure, this might fit on my myth one, that the prison people who construct prisons, anybody in here that does that? I'm speaking to so anyway, they base their future costs on the failure rate of programs.
Wow.
Because they know these kids are going to be in the criminal justice system. So they base their prison construction costs on our failure rate improvement. And right now, about 40% of fourth graders, entering fourth graders, do not read on level. Does that scare you yet? Along with dyslexia comes another dysgraphia, trouble with writing, trouble with calculating, trouble with speaking, dysgraphia, the fine motor issue, but that comes along with it. On your table, it looks a little different, but there's a fact sheet on dyslexia on your table. Oh, and a lot of these other graphs are on your table as well. Feel free to read them or not. Hopefully you'll take them with you. So there's a lot of facts about it. Let's get to this next one. So our recipe for success, and this is what the YouFly program is doing, is that we have explicit instruction. None of this whole language. Let's look at the picture and see what this word is. If the word is, in their text is one word, they go, oh, it's a pony. But the word in their text starts with an H. Why is that okay? That's not okay. It's a horse. It's not a pony. They start with 2 different letters, and if this child can sound it out, then they'll get the right word. So let's look at the pictures and guess. what the word might be. So systematic is following like little words onto bigger words and not giving them words they haven't been taught. So that's the systematic part. Multisensory, on your table are some cubes. That's what I use for phonemic awareness for that level one. The first thing, and we actually manipulate sounds without any letters. When they're in kindergarten and learning how to do math, do we give them numbers? No, we give them little bears to count. We give them little stars to count, fish to count. There are no numbers written on that page because they have to learn that. They need to learn their number sense before they can do their math. Very repetitive, 30 to 60 hours. And it's all research-based, evidence-based. 2 minutes. All righty, I'm going to wrap up. So on your table also are these are the phonemic awareness steps I go through. We literally teach mouth pictures to make this up. We teach them everything God gave them. Their ears, their eyes, and their mouth, and their hands. So because dyslexia is a language-based disability, we want to be thoughtful about our use of language to avoid overwhelming them. It's got to be very systematic and they learn as they go. We don't jump ahead. Our language should be precise and clear. And in closing, I'm going to go back to the slide. I didn't. So one of my mantras is what's up there in the green. Is sounds make words. Or sounds make letters. Letters make words. Words make sentences. Sentences make paragraphs. Paragraphs make stories. So in order to get to comprehension, we need to start with sounds and phonemic awareness. Thank you so much for having me here. I really, this is just wonderful to get out in the community and speak what is just in my heart and has occupied me for so many years. The success that I've had with kids is phenomenal. And it's because other people come up with the programs. I didn't come up with this on my own. But it is great to implement it and it actually works. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Raise your hands and walk.
That you hit on this, and thanks for being here. Really enjoyed it. But has the way we instruct children to read changed in the last 40 years?
No. I mean, that's why our numbers are still down. I mean, isolated pockets, yes. We have, with the other thing we're blessed with here is the DePaul School, and it is 40 years old. I'm actually on the board there. It's 40 years old. And they teach this all day long. So if you had to get to a private school, that would be a great one to go to. But no, they've been teaching that whole language. Then there was a company called Ponce and Mel, and they teach that recuing, like, oh, let's look at the picture and see if we figure out what the word is. You know, it starts with a P, or it starts with an H. Come on, it's not that hard. It's not hard. They get it.
We have a question back there.
I was kind of interested in that definition of remediation, because 60 hours doesn't really seem like that much. After that 60 hours, are they tooled then to move forward and not have to have continual additional education, or what are the expectations?
That's a good question. Every child is different. That's kind of an average 30 to 60. So, some children may need additional work. You give me a child, I can get him reading in 40 hours. It may not be exactly where his level is, but with this kind of explicit instruction, we can bring them up for grade level or even 2 grade levels within a year. It depends on how far behind they are and how old they are. My 13-year-old is going to take a full year, and I'm seeing him 3 times a week. Pretty much they're good to go. I see kids who, if I cut loose, I don't want to keep them forever. They don't need to, I don't want to drop like when I was at EDA. I don't want to drive by and just like have this, conviction that, oh gosh, that place was horrible. I want it to be the place that saved them. And so I want to get them in, I want to get them out and bring someone right back in. bring someone new in.
Nancy, great.
What it really is, great to have you here. Whoa. All right, I'm just gonna talk normally. Great to have you here. I love seeing the direction your life has gone since we were law clerks together 3.5 decades ago. But question I had, you had a slide up there that had some other things related to dyslexia involving writing, numbers, things like that. And how often do those things correlate in the same person, or are they oftentimes separate issues, or, and how do you deal with them, say, with numbers, whatever that was called?
Right, so the methodology or the approach of the reading is called Orton-Gillingham. If I've ever heard of Orton-Gillingham, you can Google that. They use those same methods with math. Just calculate is that like they had trouble counting the bears and telling you there's 3 bears there. So that's kind of a clue that they're having trouble with the calculation or the adding. That can be by itself. You know, they can be a great reader, but they can't do math. A lot of my dyslexic kids are very good at math. Like the neuropsychologist says, well, I don't know where your son got dyslexia. I said, I don't know where my son got dyslexia. And they're like, well, you were both engineers. I went, that doesn't mean dyslexia. So, and it can come at dyspraxia, carries some dyslexia with it. Dysgraphia definitely overlaps. They have trouble with their handwriting. Messy handwriting, can't stand the lines. They pick up their pencils all the time. They make different letters. The most common comorbid condition with dyslexia is ADHD. And I could be here all day talking about ADHD and executive function, but that's the more common one that comes with it. But a lot of these dys's come along as well. Maybe with me. The Venn diagram, right? Yes, maybe.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I have a feeling you just barely scratched the surface, so thank you. And some of the figures you showed were frankly terrifying and very alarming, so thank you for all that you do and for our community. Thank you, just thank you. So, and thank you to everyone who is here today. It's great to see you. We appreciate you being here, and thank you to our folks that joined us by Zoom. We're glad you were with us as